Hello and welcome to another episode of the Accredited Investors Only podcast presented by Accredited Life. I am your host, Peter Neal. Thank you so much for joining me today for another fantastic episode. I am very excited about the interview we have lined up today. But before we get into that, it's Easter season. Last week was Easter. I didn't have a chance to record an introduction to last week's episode, so I thought today I would take a moment to speak about Easter and just spring in general. This time of year, I think this is such a fantastic time to reflect. It's a fantastic time for renewal. It's obviously Easter is a time for Christians like myself to remember and to reflect on the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus. And I think this is a great time of year to kind of reconnect and to grow in our faith and look for ways that we can strengthen our faith and our relationship with God and the entire world around us. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Accredited Life and everything I talk about on this podcast and in the community and in our workshops and things like that. It's about living the accredited life, living the best life you possibly can. And one of the things I talk a lot about in that first stage is building and rebuilding and stabilizing your core foundation. So who you are, who you've been, all that kind of stuff that makes you the person you are. And I think it's so important, at least for me personally, to try to build that foundation, to start with your relationship to God, to your relationship to a higher power, to the world around you. I think that's such a great place and such a strong foundation to build off of. It's not always easy. There's always times in life where I think we can get it can be very challenging, right? And we can get down. But this time of year, when the weather's changing, it's getting, at least here in the Philadelphia suburbs, it's beautiful outside. The weather's been really nice. The flowers are in bloom. Everything looks fantastic. It feels nice outside. This is a great time to be reflecting, to be looking at renewal, to be just looking for ways in your life that you can strengthen your foundation, you can strengthen your core for who you are. And I think this is a great time of year to do it. So without further ado, we have an amazing interview today with somebody who's doing amazing things within the ground up development space, a space that I absolutely love. So I'm really excited to bring this to you. Justin Goodin from Goodin Development is our guest. Justin, just a little background on Justin. He was born in Indianapolis, Indiana. He went to the Kelly School of Business in Indiana. After college, she spent some time in the multifamily underwriting space for a local bank. He's kind of evolved in his real estate investing, which we're going to talk about, to what he does today with focusing on ground up development of luxury apartments. So without further ado, let's get right into the interview with Justin.
You're listening to the Accredited Investors Only podcast presented by Accredited Life.
Justin, welcome to the show. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I feel great. Thanks for having me on, Pierre.
Thanks for being here. Well, I'm looking forward to this conversation because I absolutely love what you do. And I think the audience is going to love it as well. So I'm looking to get into a deep dive on what exactly it is you do and kind of the journey you've had in your investing and development career. So why don't we start with you introducing yourself, Justin?
Of course. Yeah, thank you. So I'm a multifamily developer located in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is where I was born and raised. So today we are building Class A mixed-use apartments here in Indiana from the ground up. But yeah, it's like you mentioned, it's quite the journey to get here. Didn't always start as a developer. I came from a very, average middle-class family and went to business school for finance and supply chain management. And around that time is like when I started getting interested in real estate. And like most people, when they want to get started in real estate, most people, the first thought that comes to mind is I'll go buy a fix and flip or a rental. And that's exactly what I did. Not knowing anything else about real estate, I bought a rental on the west side of Indianapolis for $44,000. If you can believe that.
Wow.
And that was back in 2018. This was a recently renovated flip, $44,000 that I bought as a rental and just rented it out to a tenant, collected a small amount of cash flow, and then ran into a problem when I wanted to go buy more properties. When you're in that residential space and buying these single family houses, I mean, you're having to most of the time put down 20%, which at the time was a lot of money for me, knowing that I wanted to scale my business, keep buying properties, and buy like the next 20, 30 houses. I ran into a big problem, and I was like, how am I going to afford to keep putting down 20% every time I wanted to buy a property? So on one of these houses I was buying, long story short, he was also liquidating his assets, like his single family houses, to go into apartments, which sort of like triggered in my brain, like to start looking into commercial real estate, apartment investing, raising capital from investors and partners, and scaling that way into commercial multifamily real estate. So started looking into that after I sort of like had that epiphany, if you can call it that. And after business school, I started working as a multifamily underwriter for a bank here in Indiana. So all that was like really, fantastic experience for what I do today, kind of seeing how banks underwrite deals, how they evaluate sponsors, all of that like really propelled me to go full-time in real estate. So left my W-2 job to pursue apartment investing full-time. And past 5 years, I've been full-time in real estate, started out buying existing multifamily assets, a lot of, value add stuff, buying them, fixing them up, selling them, and, raising capital with investors to do that. And about a year ago, we had transitioned into ground up multifamily development. And there's a few, reasons for that switch. But yeah, long story short, that's how I got here today and what we're doing.
Wow. There's so much to dissect in that just short introduction there. Going back to, you said you grew up in like an average middle class household. What was your first introduction to real estate? Like how did you, especially at such a young age too? You hear these stories about people getting involved during their college years, but that's a rare story. So how did you come across it?
Yeah, so the only like just glimpse into real estate that I had was through my dad. And he had owned a duplex, and he started like what we know as today as house hacking. So he bought it like when I was, a little kid, and was renting one side, living in the other. So he started house hacking, and then he had that duplex as a rental the whole time I was growing up. And I was like always heard from him that he wished he would have bought more when he was younger. Like he wished he would have bought more and scaled his portfolio. So that was like my first kind of glimpse into real estate. And didn't like really think too much of it at the time. And but that's like my first taste. And then I got my I got started in real estate just for like wanting like more passive income. So nobody else in my family was a real estate investor. I sort of just like drifted into that path, just like wanting more passive income that we all want and hear about.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's amazing. How did you balance, the college life and rentals and doing that side of the business and probably learning a lot, I'm assuming, reading books and like stuff like that, right? Were you educating yourself in that world as you were also doing the supply chain management stuff, or?
Yeah, I mean, just a ton of self-education, a lot of time management. Didn't like really have that much of a exciting personal life. But yeah, there was a time I was actually investing in real estate, going to school full time, working, and also served part time in the Army National Guard. So serving in the military part time as well, doing all that. So yeah, I mean, those are some really busy times of my life. But yeah, just a lot of time management, a lot of just like focusing on my goals, and like you mentioned, a ton of self-education in my spare time. That's YouTube, mentors, listening to podcasts like this, and just doing everything, everything I can to supplement my knowledge.
Yeah. Wow. So how was it taking the leap into multifamily? Did you start small and kind of scale up, or did you get involved with a partnership, or what did that look like?
Yeah, exactly. So into commercial multifamily, like my first property was a 29 unit on the west side of Indianapolis. Then we actually turned into a 33 unit, and there's more to that story. But yeah, it's sort of like a smaller, medium sized multifamily property. Me and one other general partner bought this property, raised about $500,000 from passive investors, and then yeah, that's my first taste into commercial multifamily and doing the syndication route.
Gotcha. So what led you? Yeah, first and foremost, I think sometimes investment and development are kind of two different things, right? In a lot of ways. So speak to me about the differences between being a real estate investor, buying value add or stabilized, a multifamily or single family versus development, and how they differ and how they relate, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So as a, real estate investor, like you mentioned, you're just buying regular existing assets, whether that's, stabilized, value add type strategies, but you're buying a building that's already there, already cash flowing, and you're just taking over that existing asset. On the development side today, we're putting in a whole lot of upfront work to, build a brand new property from scratch. So we're finding an awesome location, going through like any kind of necessary rezoning or permitting process, and then, spending the next, 14 months or 2 years building this property from the ground up. So I'd say they're similar in the fact that you're all getting to like the same end goal. Like you're, going to buy a property or build a property um, with your investors, and then benefit from the tax benefits, cash flow, all the appreciation that comes with it. But you're sort of just getting there in two different ways.
Mm, that's a good way to put it. What was it that kind of interests you about the development space, and what was kind of the catalyst for the transition from value add multifamily into development?
Yeah, great question. I say the biggest reason that I switched from doing value add to development is the vast amount of competition in the value add space. There's at least like in my experience, there's so many investors and so many companies going after the same kind of value add asset and criteria,
Mm.
which I think and I experience, it just inflates the prices, makes it extremely competitive, makes deals like really hard to pencil out and find. So there's just so many investors went after the same kind of value add asset, which I think just drove up the competition and just makes it so much more competitive, in my opinion. So I spent like an entire year without buying any kind of existing, multifamily asset, couldn't find anything, couldn't get anything to pencil. And, just wasn't comfortable pitching some of these deals to my investors. Like you really had to just stretch your underwriting and stretch your projections where, everything had to go right for
Mm.
this deal to work. And in the end, like the competition was just so great. Um, I think it just made a lot more sense to go into development, which I think there's less competition doing that, less investors willing to put in, 8, 9 months of upfront work before they even start the build process. Um, and other than that, I mean, it's just honestly like really cool. It's just really amazing to be a part of the building a building from start to finish, from seeing it from a vacant piece of land all the way up into a nice new Class A building. So you sort of like have that passion that I didn't really get, buying an existing asset, but it is pretty amazing just to be involved in the process from start to finish.
Yeah, without a doubt. And to go back to like the competition part, I think too there's a larger barrier to entry to development for a lot of different reasons. And we've talked about this before, where it's like a lot of times you see developers, it's almost like 9 out of 10 times it's a family business. Their father did it, the grandfather did it, the great grandfather did it. They were builders, developers. So it always seems like, oh, that's why they're doing that. Yeah, I mean, for somebody like yourself though, it's a little bit different. So I think that creates that barrier to entry creates opportunity, but at the same time, it's difficult to break into. So kind of how did you transition? How were you able to break into the space?
Yeah, my biggest, I guess, reason for getting into the space and making that transition was just working with a mentor. So I have another local mentor in my own city that I'm able to connect with, meet with, and able to like bounce ideas off. But I do agree with you. Like the barrier to entry into development is extremely difficult. Like you really have to know somebody, have a mentor, have family that's already doing this business. Um, it's definitely not impossible to break into, but again, like there's just so many variables and so many different things you have to know and understand, the connections you have to have in the city, willing to have some of these upfront costs, be able to do that. much easier with a friend, another partner, a mentor, somebody to help you like in the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's crucial, and it's the same with getting into investing in general. It's always
Of course.
helpful, right, to have somebody. But on the development side, I would think it's maybe even a little. It's just it's even more important a little bit because, like you said, there's just so many parts of the process. So maybe walk me through one of your projects from kind of start to where they are today. Yeah, so because as a developer, in a lot of ways, you're a conductor, right? You are kind of getting, I'm sure you're working with a lot of different teams and different experts, from engineers to architects, brokers, attorneys, people in the municipality. And also talk to me about that, and maybe you can use one of your projects as an example.
Yeah, great question. So yeah, like you mentioned, I would describe as a developer as somebody like at the top of the pyramid, and there's all these different parties and companies that you're sort of overseeing, managing. You're tracking budgets, tracking timelines. Like you are the person, like you're the company or the guy that is responsible for everything that happens to the project that goes right or wrong. Like you are ultimately responsible. And so yeah, you're at the top there, kind of just managing all these different third party companies, and then they all come together and work together to get that common goal of building that project. So our most recent project is a 84 unit property on sort of like a northeast side of town of Indianapolis in Fishers, Indiana. So 84 units. There's a 15,000 square feet of office on the bottom floor of the main building, and then four small commercial suites. So it's a residential mixed use property is what we call it. So residential up top, and then some small commercial retail tenants on the bottom. So it's not just like a boring apartment complex. It's more of a like community,
Mm.
and more like something that the whole area can benefit from, with the stores and the places that are on the bottom. So $32 million deal. We're in December of 2024 right now, and we're about 60% complete. We started this project in February 2024, predicting about a 14-month construction timeline. And our whole business plan is building properties, leasing them up, and then selling them. So after we start leasing it up in early spring, we'll ultimately like want to work towards a sale as soon as possible.
Okay. Okay. And let's kind of talk to me about, how did you find the land? How did you negotiate that? And then how did you did you need zoning relief? I mean, just kind of talk to me about the process of how it came together.
Yeah, so on the actual beginning stages of it, my actual co-development partner, he was the one who found the land, got it under contract. There was just like some blighted houses on this street. In Fitchers, Indiana is a really high income area, like really, thriving, nice A-class area. So these blighted houses were kind of just like an eyesore to the area. So my other partner was able to get these houses under contract, and there was some land in the back of those houses as well. Altogether, there's about 3 acres of land, and mostly like we're focused on building a compelling project that we can go and propose that to the city. So we show the city like why they would want to have this property into their city. Well, I mean, for one, it's creating jobs, it's bringing quality living spaces to the area, and bringing businesses into the area as well. So like in the office space that I mentioned, we actually have a company that had their headquarters in downtown Indianapolis that is moving to Fishers, Indiana, in an office space. So we're bringing businesses, we're bringing job into the area. So ultimately, like when we went and got these properties under contract, we presented a very compelling project to the city and to the community. Like why they would want this property into the area.
Yeah, yeah. I'm assuming you needed a little zoning relief for that. Was it zoned to allow for 84 units of multifamily, or was it?
It was not. So yeah, there was a rezoning and permitting process, and correct.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're working in areas that are somewhat developer friendly. Here in the suburbs of Philadelphia, there's some areas that are, but there's certainly some areas that aren't, and it certainly helps when you are working with a township or, municipality that wants development. Some of them do, and some of them don't. And it sounds like you're fortunate to be in an area that it's growing, and there's people in the municipality that want to see new development come in, and they want to see the benefits of that.
Agree. And yeah, to that point, I mean, Indiana has just always been a very, very business friendly, very landlord friendly state as it is. And I like to explain to these different municipalities that we come in contact with that like really like all growth starts with housing.
Mm.
Like people have to live in your community in order for your city or town to grow. Like companies and businesses are not going to come into that area if nobody's living there for them to work at their plants or their companies. So I like to explain like all growth happens with housing. If nobody's living there, then these companies or like these municipalities, these cities, these towns, they'll all get left behind because people are going to go where there's actually places to live. If there's nowhere for them to live, then they're not going there. So
Sure. No, it's yeah, that environment, it's kind of everything, but like you said, I mean, the housing is such a crucial part of it, because at that point, then if they're going to need to travel, in their car or public transit or something like that, and that just creates a little bit of an issue. We have a development across the street from us here that is. They've kind of built this mini city, where there's how I think the first phase was regular. It's like semi-detached single family homes. Then there was like townhomes, and then there was retail that came in, hotels, like all. It's just this whole ecosystem where everything's feeding off of each other. So how's the area for others? Is there in the areas that you're investing in, are they downtown? Like, are you walking to, other kind of retail and stuff like that right now? Or is that something that I don't know if they have comprehensive plans in Indiana, but like, is that part of the plan? Do they want to see more and more of that? Or what does that look like? And then too, like, what's the demographics look like? Are we talking like, who's renting these houses? Is it younger professionals? Is it older people? What's that look like?
yeah. So to your first question, yeah, I'd say like a lot of different cities and towns, they want to work on growing their downtown area. So our Fishers project is like right in the downtown area. Our one we have going right now is not in the downtown area, more like in the suburbs kind of this city. So yeah, I think it kind of just depends. But I think like always finding the absolute best location is like number one criteria that we always go by. It doesn't matter if it's an awesome market or, city, whatever, like it has to be in an awesome, just like perfect location because our end goal or our end customer is those residents moving into the property. So we have to find just the absolute best location for them to live in.
Yeah. And what does that look like? What is from like a demographic standpoint? Who's clientele on the tenant side?
So at least like for us, what we're doing over here, like we are building properties that are more tailored towards young professionals, young couples, single dads is another like big people or big criteria who rents our properties actually. So these are all 1 and 2 bedrooms. Like there's no 3, 4 bedrooms. There's not playgrounds on the property. These are very just like more upscale, class A, nice luxury properties, all 1 and 2 bedrooms that tailor towards those, younger professionals, younger couples, and not so much like on the family side.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming like in Fisher and in these areas, they're pulling a lot of that. Is there universities around there, or like what does that look like?
Yeah, so in Fishers, there's not like really a university nearby, but there is a hospital expansion that's going on down the street. There's a Top Golf, tons of other businesses and restaurants. It's a very like A class, thriving area. The average income in the Fishers area is about 160,000.
Wow.
So very like A class, very like thriving community. Fishers is sort of like the nicer part of Indianapolis, and everybody here like locally recognizes that too. So
Gotcha. Okay. I haven't been to Indianapolis in a long time, but when I was there, I loved it. It was a beautiful place, and that was that was a long time ago. So let's pivot. Let's talk about the underwriting. Yeah, I mean that's I think I have a friend who worked as an underwriter for a for somebody that did a lot of commercial loans, and I think that was such a great experience to be able to see things from that perspective. So talk to me about how you got into that, and then how that is kind of probably in some ways built a foundation for what you do today.
Yeah. So me, like the underwriting part, like the financial analysis part has always just been just a strong point of mine. I always feel like the numbers like always like tell a story. Like even like when I was buying existing multifamily assets, like you can look at that profit and loss statement. Like you can see exactly like what's going on with the property. Good, bad. You can recognize trends. You can spot red flags. So I mean, for me, like it's always just come down to the numbers. I've always just loved, Excel, analyzing stuff, being a numbers guy. That's always just been like my forte. So actually, yeah, I really enjoyed like working at the bank, kind of seeing how banks analyze sponsors, how they underwrite deals, how they evaluate risk. All of that was like a really, nice like look behind the scenes that sort of like helped me out with what I do today.
So what would you say the biggest differences are between underwriting for value add multifamily versus underwriting for new construction, new development?
Uh, yeah, I mean, on the value add side, like both cases, like you're making educated assumptions, right?
Mm, mm.
So on the value add side, Um, I'd say like you're more focused on your rent premium. You're looking at comps in the area today, and you're seeing like, what can you do to this property to increase the value? Is that increasing the rent, increasing other income, decreasing expenses? Is it both of those things? You're like really like using like your imagination in a way and thinking about this property like as a business. Like what can you as a new owner do to make this property worth more in 5 years so you can sell it for a huge profit. On the development side, we are making like very educated assumptions about what this property is going to be doing in 2 or 3 years from now when we start, leasing it up and it's built. So we're like using data we have available today and making those assumptions like 2 years from now on how we think the property is going to perform. So we're looking at, comps today, what are comparable properties in the area charging for rent today, using those assumptions to make our rent projections in year two. Um, and then same like looking at like past projects, past developments, looking at that expense ratio. We're working with the city to calculate a tax number that we're going to pay to the city. So we're using like, all kinds of like data we have available today and making that or using that to make assumptions for our project in the future.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. How would you say your core investor and the conversations with investors have changed transitioning from value add multifamily to new development? Because I would think it's a different, it's probably a different, little bit of a different investor. Not everybody that would invest in value add would invest in new development and vice versa. But at the same time, I think new development is one of those things where it's going to attract a lot of people. Just because of this sheer exciting, the vision around it, everything you've been saying. So I'm curious to hear from you how the investor side has changed over time.
So I say like the biggest change that investors can expect if they've, historically invested in, regular value add assets or existing assets and they're moving into development is just that they can expect no cash flow during the construction phase. Everything else is relatively similar. But because like we're building the property from the ground up, we're going through a construction phase, there's no the property is not producing income. There's no cash flow during the construction phase, but they can't expect cash flow and distributions once we lease the property, once we stabilize it. And that could be around, 2 years after we officially start. But that's the biggest difference. Um, the way I've communicated it to investors is that, if you don't want or necessarily need the cash flow and you're much more concerned with just multiplying your equity faster, then development could be a, awesome business plan for you to invest in. So, I mean, like I mentioned, like, we are not focused on long-term holds or holding the property after we lease it up. We are very much just focused on building it, leasing it up, and selling it as quickly as possible. So we are like really just more focused on, just multiplying our investors' equity as quickly as possible.
Gotcha. And that kind of leads into my next question. That yeah, as a developer, in a lot of ways, you're a visionary. So what's your vision? What's your vision for the future of Goodin development and all?
Yeah, so for us, we're just going to stay laser focused on doing one thing. Just a huge fan of being laser focused on one end goal. And for us, that's building, A-class mixed use communities here in Indiana. So you can expect to see like only projects from us in Indiana for the very foreseeable future, and only, class A properties. So you're not going to see properties from us in Florida or Texas or whatever. It's only going to be, class A projects here in Indiana. So we're going to be just focused on doing that. And then I think like after 3 to 4 years, we're going to explore becoming vertically integrated. So in the future, I'll, explore having in-house construction management, in-house property management. But for now, we're just kind of focused on just one thing, and that's just being a developer.
Yeah, yeah. I'm assuming you need to have a certain amount of volume kind of in the pipeline and all before you can bring on somebody in-house to run the construction management side and things like that.
Correct.
Gotcha. So for investors that want to learn more about yourself and the projects that you're doing, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so on our website, I created a free 7-day email course that can show you how to get started passively investing in these projects from A to Z. It's a simple 7-day email course. If you go to goodindevelopment.com/course, you can sign up there. Also, you can follow me on LinkedIn, just Justin Goodin. Last name is Goodin, and then you can follow me there as well.
Awesome, Justin. Thank you so much for talking to me today. I really enjoyed the conversation. Love what you're doing, and hope to stay in touch to just see how this how it develops in the future. So, thank you so much for being with me.
Thanks, Peter.